Deep beneath the sacred sands of Abydos, archaeologists stumbled upon something that wasn't supposed to exist, a tomb so massive, so elaborate, that it could only belong to royalty. But there's one problem. They don't know who's buried there. The name was deliberately destroyed, chiseled away, erased from history. In January 2025, a team digging in Egypt's most sacred necropolis discovered a limestone burial chamber that rewrites everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. 3 rooms, painted goddesses, evidence of incredible wealth, and absolutely no clue who built it. This isn't just another tomb. This is the resting place of a king whose very existence was wiped from the records of time. A ruler so dangerous, so controversial, that someone wanted him forgotten forever. But 3,600 years later, his tomb is speaking, and what it's saying terrifies experts. This is the story of the forgotten king, and the mystery that refuses to stay buried. The city of Abydos was not just another settlement in ancient Egypt. It was the most sacred place in the entire kingdom. For thousands of years, Egyptians believed that Abydos was where Osiris, the god of the underworld, was buried. The god who ruled over death, resurrection, and the afterlife made this place the gateway between the living and the dead. To be buried in Abydos meant your soul would be closer to eternal life. It meant protection. It meant power, even in death. Because of this belief, Egypt's earliest pharaohs chose Abydos as their final resting place. The first kings of unified Egypt, those who ruled over 5,000 years ago, built their tombs in the desert hills overlooking the Nile. Over centuries, the site became a massive necropolis, a city of the dead that stretched for miles. Tombs were carved into the rock. Temples were erected. Generation after generation of rulers added to the sacred landscape. But not all of Egypt's kings are remembered. During a chaotic period known as the Second Intermediate Period, roughly between 1640 and 1540 BC, Egypt fractured. The unified kingdom split apart. Different dynasties claimed power in different regions. Foreign invaders called the Hyksos controlled the north. Local rulers fought for control in the south. It was a time of civil war, political collapse, and confusion. Records from this era are incomplete. Many kings ruled for short periods and left almost no trace. Some dynasties were so minor that later Egyptians simply forgot they existed. One of these forgotten dynasties is called the Abydos Dynasty. Until recently, historians weren't even sure it was real. The Abydos Dynasty first appeared in academic research in 1997 when an Egyptologist named Kim Ryholt proposed that a small group of kings had ruled Upper Egypt from the city of Abydos during the chaos of the Second Intermediate Period. But there was almost no evidence. A few scattered inscriptions, some fragmented pottery, a couple of names that didn't match any known pharaohs. For years, the Abydos dynasty remained a theory, a historical ghost story that most scholars dismissed. Then, in 2014, everything changed. An international team led by Dr. Joseph Wegner from the University of Pennsylvania was excavating in the Abydos necropolis when they found the first confirmed tomb of an Abydos dynasty king. His name was Senebkai, and his burial chamber was modest but real. Inside, they found his skeleton. He had died violently. His bones showed evidence of brutal injuries, probably from battle. Cuts to his skull, damage to his feet and ankles. This king had been killed in combat, and his body had been hastily mummified. The discovery confirmed that the Abydos dynasty wasn't a myth. These kings had existed, they had ruled, they had fought, and died. But Senebkai's tomb was small. Clearly, he wasn't the most powerful king of the dynasty. Somewhere nearby, There had to be larger tombs, tombs belonging to the dynasty's founders or its most important rulers. And in January 2025, the team found it. The excavation site was near the base of a natural pyramid-shaped hill called the Mountain of Anubis. Ancient Egyptians considered this hill sacred because its shape resembled the pyramids built by the great pharaohs of the Old Kingdom. It was the perfect place to hide royal tombs. The team was working about 23 feet underground when their tools struck limestone. Not loose rock, not sand, carved limestone blocks. As they cleared away centuries of debris, the outline of a structure began to emerge. Walls, a doorway, then rooms. 3 chambers carved deep into the bedrock. The main burial chamber measured over 19 feet long and more than 6 feet wide. That's massive by the standards of this period. Most tombs from the Second Intermediate Period were cramped, hastily built affairs. This one was spacious, carefully planned and constructed with precision. The walls were smooth, the ceilings were high. Someone important had been buried here. At the entrance to the tomb, the archaeologists found something that made their hearts race: painted bricks. In ancient Egypt, important tombs often had inscriptions on the entryway, identifying the person buried inside. The name, the titles, sometimes prayers for the afterlife. This tomb had that too, or at least it used to. Someone had taken a chisel and methodically destroyed the hieroglyphics. The painted text was smashed, scratched out, made unreadable. Whoever did this wasn't just looting the tomb, they were erasing the king's identity. In ancient Egyptian belief, your name was your soul. If your name was destroyed, your spirit couldn't survive in the afterlife. This was the ultimate insult, the ultimate revenge. Dr. Joseph Wegner, the team leader, stood in front of the damaged inscription and realized what they were looking at. This tomb belonged to a king whose enemies wanted him forgotten. A ruler so controversial that after his death, someone went to the trouble of climbing down into his tomb and obliterating every trace of his name. But who was he, and what did he do to deserve such hatred? Inside the main chamber, the archaeologists found clues. Painted on the walls were 2 goddesses, Isis and Nephthys. These deities were always present at royal funerals. They represented mourning and protection. Their presence confirmed this was a king's tomb. Near the walls, fragments of shattered pottery lay scattered. The shapes matched vessels used to store offerings, food, wine, oils, things the dead would need in the afterlife. But all of it had been smashed. Looters had been here, probably multiple times over the centuries. The team also found traces of wood, likely from a coffin that had long since decayed. Whoever was buried here had been placed in a wooden sarcophagus, not stone. That was unusual for royalty, but not unheard of during this period. Resources were scarce. Egypt was divided. Even kings had to make do with less. But the size of the tomb, the quality of the carving, the presence of royal symbols, all of it pointed to one conclusion. This was the largest Abydos Dynasty tomb ever discovered. Bigger than Senebkhe's, bigger than any other tomb from this forgotten era. That meant this king was more powerful, more important, possibly the founder of the dynasty or one of its early rulers. Yet his name was gone, erased, and without a name, history has no record of him. He is the forgotten king, a pharaoh who ruled 3,600 years ago and then vanished from every scroll, The destruction was deliberate and thorough. But here's the irony. By trying to erase him, his enemies made him unforgettable. Now, 3,600 years later, archaeologists are obsessed with uncovering his identity. The forgotten king has become one of the most talked about discoveries of 2025.
The tomb itself is still being studied. Teams are working carefully to preserve what's left. The painted images of Isis and Nephthys are being documented and protected. Every fragment of pottery is being analyzed. DNA testing might reveal biological connections to other known pharaohs. Advanced imaging technology is being used to see if any traces of the original hieroglyphics remain. Even though the text was chiseled away, sometimes microscopic paint particles survive in the stone's pores. If enough traces exist, experts might be able to reconstruct the name using spectral imaging. But even if they never identify him, the forgotten king has already changed history. His tomb proves that the Abydos Dynasty was more significant than anyone thought. These weren't minor local chiefs. They were legitimate pharaohs who built monumental tombs and commanded loyalty from skilled craftsmen. The dynasty may have been short-lived, but it was real, and it mattered. More discoveries are coming. Dr. Wegner's team plans to excavate over 100,000 square feet of desert terrain around the tomb. They believe there are at least 10 more royal tombs buried nearby. Each one could reveal new names, new kings, new pieces of this historical puzzle. The mountain of Anubis is giving up its secrets slowly. Every dig season brings new surprises. And somewhere in that sacred sand, more forgotten kings are waiting.
But there's another mystery that haunts this discovery. Why was the tomb left relatively intact? Most royal tombs in Egypt were completely gutted by thieves. Gold stripped, mummies torn apart, even the wooden coffins burned for firewood. But this tomb, while looted, wasn't destroyed. The structure remained solid. The paintings survived. It's almost as if the looters were afraid. Ancient Egyptians believed that disturbing a king's rest brought terrible consequences: curses, hauntings, sickness. Maybe the tomb robbers took what they could carry and fled, too terrified to do more damage. Or maybe someone in ancient times tried to protect the tomb. Perhaps descendants of the forgotten king sealed it again after the first looting. Perhaps priests performed rituals to guard his spirit. We'll never know for sure. But standing at the entrance of that tomb today, even skeptical scientists admit feeling something. The weight of time, the presence of the past. The sense that this place holds more than just stone and sand. Dr. Wegner said it best. Egypt was broken apart into multiple rival kingdoms when these kings were ruling. There was a lot of conflict and turmoil. The forgotten king lived in a world at war. He fought for power. He built monuments. He tried to secure his place in eternity. And for 3,600 years, it seemed like he had failed. His name was erased. His tomb was looted. His dynasty was forgotten. But now, in 2025, the world knows he existed. Archaeologists speak his story, even if they don't know his name. Millions of people around the globe are learning about the Abydos Dynasty because of him. In a strange way, the forgotten king has achieved immortality after all. Not through the preservation of his name, but through the mystery of its absence. He is famous for being forgotten, powerful because he was erased. And that might be the greatest twist of all. The excavation continues. The search for his identity goes on. And somewhere in that ancient tomb, beneath the mountain of Anubis, the forgotten king rests, silent, nameless, but no longer alone. Because now, the world is watching. What do you think? Who was the forgotten king? Why was his name destroyed? Drop your theories in the comments below.
and subscribe to Buried Evidence because this mystery is far from over. The sands of Egypt are still hiding secrets, and we're going to uncover every single one.